Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member, for holding this hearing, and thank you to our very impressive panel. Over the past several months, we've seen so many survivors of harassment and abuse speak up, and it really is making a difference. And I appreciate that you are all here today. And no matter what the industry is, everyone deserves to work in a safe workplace. As policymakers on this committee, we have to do everything we can to make sure that our scientists and researchers are able to do their work free from harassment and abuse. We talk a lot about getting more women in the sciences, but we need to not only get them in the sciences, we need to be able to keep them there when they get there. And a working environment that's free from harassment and abuse and power abuse will mean that researchers can focus their full attention on finding the next great scientific achievements. I thank Dr. Cordova for her leadership at the NSF on this issue. A few years ago, a fisheries biologist who's very passionate about her work came into my office with a serious issue. She and some of her female colleagues had experienced sexual harassment while conducting research on a ship owned by NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. After reporting the harassment, this talented scientist had been effectively grounded from furthering her career. Her research was derailed. Her colleagues and her harasser knew that she had reported the harassment, and she was counseled against going back out to sea for her own safety. There seemed to be little investigation into her case at the time, her case and other women's cases. I contacted NOAA, including then Administrator Dr. Catherine Sullivan, who took this issue very seriously. And with Dr. Sullivan's leadership, NOAA changed their policies and practices. They made it easier to report sexual harassment. They implemented new training, and they changed their investigation protocol. And I just thank Dr. Sullivan for really taking the lead on that. This investigation into this particular case was completed, and best of all, this talented scientist returned to sea. Since then, she's gone on 3 research cruises, and she said, and I quote, "For the first time in my career, I was able to focus entirely on my work." So it really does make a difference. So we have to do more to both prevent harassment and to make sure that victims can seek justice. And all of our agencies need to take a close examination of their practices and put into place these accountability measures that will focus on prevention and also justice for survivors. So, Dr. Clancy, your research talked about how women conducting research in isolated field sites are particularly vulnerable. So I want to ask you, Ms. Davis and Ms. McEntee, can you talk about some particular protections that can be implemented at field research sites to keep scientists safe? And I want to save time for a question from Ms. Larson as well.
Some of the first things are, at least in our most recent research, we had a paper come out in November of 2017 that talked about the importance of having both implicit and explicit rules at the field site. So generally speaking, I think explicit rules are the best, having an actual code of conduct of some sort, having a clear line of reporting, especially one that is third party or independent of the PI who's there, or whoever the director of the field site is. So I think that that's really important. But then I also think that the implicit rules, like just getting everybody together on the first day and saying, okay, so here's what I think is appropriate behavior, here's what's inappropriate behavior, and being very clear about both of those. So articulating those.
I don't want to interrupt, but Ms. Davis and Ms. McEntee, can you add anything to that for remote sites? Because I want to get to Ms. Larson as well.
Yes, and thank you for your dedication to this issue. We took it as a prevention and reporting approach to this issue, and so we have instructional videos for anybody who's at a field site, ship, Antarctica, or any of those locations, and actually how to report. Our new portal that we set up where anyone at these sites will know how to get access information quickly. And we have several other steps we've taken.
Perfect. I'm going to get to Ms. McEntee because I want to save time for Ms. Larson.
So we would add also, we think you need training not just for those who are leading the expedition or the field, but also for bystanders, so they know how to act. And they could also implement programs like our Safe AGU, where individuals are publicly identified as having the training to assist when someone is experiencing harassment.
Thank you. Bystander speaking up is important. Ms. Larson, in 2011, President Obama released new guidance for the implementation of Title IX by universities. It clarified that Title IX cases are to be decided under a preponderance of evidence standard and imposed a 60-day limit for concluding Title IX investigations and introduced an appeals process for both parties. Last year, Secretary DeVos withdrew those updates, effectively reverting to the Title IX guidance from 2001. The specifics of the 2011 guidance, of course, were debated, but ultimately the goal was to make sure that Title IX is actually protecting individuals from harassment and abuse. So to what extent has the 2009 guidance already led to institutional change, and how will withdrawal of that guidance affect Title IX cases? And I noted also that apparently NSF used to refer Title IX complaints to the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, and even that was rescinded. So, Ms. Larson?
I think that, excuse me, thank you. I think that it wasn't, change. I used to say that working in a university is like dog years. It takes 7 years to accomplish what it would normally take a year.
It's like Congress.
Right. So I think that it was, slow to begin with. So by the time that the rescission happened, I think it was, wasn't where I would have liked to see it in the first place. But I think the rescission did add a lot of confusion over, what is the process, and it reinforced this idea that that it is two-sided. And I absolutely believe in due process. And again, I want to be very clear that there's a difference between how we look at sexual assault and harassment. But it is, it reinforces this idea that it's a 50-50 problem, and that we have to really watch out for both rights in an environment where the rights of the powerful are well protected by other ways. I think it did reinforce this idea that the victim is really not going to be supported well.
Thank you. As a member of also of the Education Committee, we'll probably follow up with you on that as we approach Higher Education Act reauthorization. I thank you. I yield back, Madam Chair.